Hello, I'm here. It's really nice to meet you. I'm Alice, your bot for the next 10 minutes. This is Bert. Bert is HCI researcher. He feels frustrated. It seems like his research participant won't show up. Again. Back at the lab, Bert is getting desperate. His interviews contain mostly useless chit-chat. What a waste of time. Bert is lying awake at night. He can't stop thinking about that one moving interview.
Hi, I'm Bert. I work with people, and as you can hear, people trust me quite often and quite a lot. In this talk, I want to introduce the idea of bot personas as a kind of interactive personas, and we can use them as off-the-shelf users. So they allow us to interact with rich user data, and we can use them as like always-on participants. So in doing so, I think we can address some interesting practical and ethical challenges of involving human users in our design processes. But first on personas. Alan Cooper introduced personas in the inmates on running the asylum. And he said, yeah, okay, personas are hypothetical archetypes of actual users. They are a precise description of our user and what he wishes to accomplish. And they are not made up. They are a byproduct of rigorous user research. And there's been a lot of discussion about personas and the sense or nonsense of personas. And for example, Jason Fried, the CEO of Basecamp, had like this argument against personas because he says, yeah, they don't talk, they don't answer, and don't have opinions. Instead, they lead to a false sense of understanding. So instead, we must get real, and we must involve real human users in our design process instead of these made-up personas. On the other hand, other people argued for personas. For example, Jared Spool says, okay, if a persona is done well, it is useful in the design process, if they are grounded in research, but as he says, it requires enough time. It is a difficult thing to do, and we must spend a lot of time in creating those. From his own, let's say, research or study, he published a blog post where he says less than 5% of personas that are used in the field are actually based on any research at all. So 95% is just made up. And if we look at our own community in the HCI literature, we find similar findings. So there are some papers discussing how personas are used, and they more or less all point into the same direction. And there, I want to take out one particular paper, presentation I attended last year, which actually sparked the idea of this presentation, and it was a presentation, Stereotypes and Politics, Reflections on Personas.
So what I'm going to talk about here is personas. If we're looking at personas, we try and give data a face, okay? Of course, by developing personas, we're also simplifying the data.
So during this talk, which is not on the topic I'm now talking about, but I got like the idea, okay, if we're simplifying the data through personas, what if we could like give the data a real face and maybe interact with it and maintain the richness of the data. So that's where the idea of this talk came from. And then of course there's the hype of chatbots. A few years ago, Wired had this article, The future of UI design is old school text messages. And for a few years already, this year will be the year where chatbots will change your life tremendously. We can order food, book flights, pay our bills, check the weather, and even bots are used to give therapy, for example, to refugees. And also in design process, bots are appearing. So for example, IDEO had these 2 blog posts this summer on how they use bots in their design process. So they use bots to communicate about field research to the designers and the researchers. So they summarize what is happening in the field through chatbots on, for example, Slack. And they also use chatbots as prototyping tool, like starting from the content, what is interesting, what is working. And these are two very interesting blog posts, actually. And I think the fact that we saw some papers in the alt.chi track, and there's even a session on bots here now, shows that it's quite a hot topic. So I was thinking, how could we combine these two? How could we interact with the data to chatbots? So in a traditional approach, design team interacts with users, or should interact with users, and retrieve all kinds of data to inform the design and get feedback. And what I propose is to use bot personas instead. So we capture data from the users through surveys or through click streams, user behavior, and we feed it to the bot personas. These bot personas are then, for example, installed on the company communication channels, for example, on Slack or Facebook Messenger. And then there the data is ready to be harvested by the design team. So the design team can start asking questions to the bots, and the bots can, of course, answer to them, to the point or not to the point, but that's another thing. We can also even implement sporadic outbursts of, let's say, input from the bot personas. So as the team is discussing something, bot personas can add their opinion as well at a random moment of time. So doing so, we really give data a face and maintain the richness of the data. And in a way, these bot personas are like voodoo dolls, echoing like the IDs of our end users. And so by letting real people fill out questionnaires and capturing their behavioral data, the data is also quite easily separated from the design team. So we don't talk to people, we talk to the data through the bots. And I see quite a lot of advantages to that. So for example, recruitment, we don't have to think about it. We just install the bot and we have the user available. They're always on, so there's a 24/7 availability company-wide regardless of your physical location. You can pause a bot, you can mute it or unsubscribe from it, and you can revisit it at any time without any explanation or hassle. We don't need to motivate them or convince them or use incentives to do so. And we can scale them, mirror them, copy, mix, and clone them. And in this way, we can breed an army of end users we can use in our design process. And above all, we eliminate the human-human interaction, which, next to the practical advantages, has quite a lot of ethical advantages as well. I think our ethical review boards will love them. And I think we must be honest, there are also quite some, there might be some disadvantages to it. So for example, what about accuracy?
But regarding accuracy, the bar is set rather low. Humans do and say surprising things all the time. So a glitch once in a while will probably go unnoticed. Also, humans show socially desirable behavior and have a mind of their own. All in all, things probably won't get worse with bots. Thank you.
That was the end of the talk.
Thank you, Bert and Alice. There's time for questions, or could you answer questions?
Hi, Michael Muller, IBM Research. If we have bots, which are at least preliminarily based on people, and then we mix and match them, aren't we back to the old problem with personas, that we don't have a basis for knowing that we're talking about anything that has a representational quality?
What a delightful question. Hashtag food for thought. Anyone else?
That was supposed to be an answer.
If that is your answer, then I'll ask another question, which is, I'm trying to say this gently, I'm wondering if you had the permission of the woman whom you turned into a caricature to do that to her image in front of 200 people. And if not, then I hope your bot will say, That's an ethical issue I need to think about.
I have prepared a second answer.
Thanks. I take that as a statement, rather than a question or a command.
I think the
I'm
question...
afraid time's up. Let us continue the conversation during the break.
Then I'll say just simply,
yeah.
we men need to think about what we do to images of women. And I urge you to think about that.
I agree with that statement. I cannot say anything else about that.